Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Dennison. I oversee the creative and digital departments at the Wall Group. We have a team of 15 across the globe dedicated to our artists' digital needs and the agency's original content production. Last year, we launched our incubator program, which pairs up and coming artists with established artist mentors. We learned a lot from this program. Ultimately, we wanted to create WALLxCHANGE as a free virtual summit to share some of the most impactful takeaways with a wider audience. So we put together the session to walk everyone through the fundamentals on how to build and navigate your career as a creative freelancer. Today, we'll be covering the basics of finance, archiving in portfolios, digital presence, and agency representation. Because this is a relatively short convo, we've also prepared a detailed study guide which will walk you through each topic, so you don't have to worry about taking super technical notes. We'll have questions at the end of the session, which you can find in the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. And if we don't get to yours, you can always email us at inclusion@thewallgroup.com, and we will get back to you and let you know what we think. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Betty Migombo, who oversees our new media initiatives and digital strategy. She'll be our guide today and walk us through each freelance topic with each of our guests.
Thanks, Erin. To kick off our discussion, we'll be talking about all things finance. I will be speaking with Danielle Gribin here, who is the VP of Finance at IMG Models and oversees finance at the Wall Group. So we're just going to dive right in because finance is such a hot topic within our freelance community. So first question is, talk to us a little bit about purchasing insurance as a freelance artist. What are some of the basics that artists should know?
Yeah, so hi everyone. Excited to be here with you all. So there's a lot of different types of insurance. So I just want to start out by saying don't get overwhelmed by it. You can always reach out to insurance companies for free quotes and they will give you all the detail on any questions that you have. But I think the main ones to kind of be relevant for you guys to talk about are going to be a general liability insurance and a professional liability insurance. So the first one, general liability, that more covers you for physical damages. So, say you're doing hair and your tools burn a countertop or something like that, and someone wants to come after you for it. Your general liability insurance is gonna cover you there. Then you have, like I mentioned, professional liability, which is similar to or the same thing as in certain cases E&O insurance, which is errors and omissions insurance, and that's going to be more for like financial damages. So say someone sues you because you used a blush on their face and they had a reaction to it or something like that. This is what's going to cover you for that type of incident. Then the other thing I would say is if you have a lot of valuable things related to your business that you store in your home, so maybe you're a stylist and you're keeping a lot of the wardrobe things there, or jewelry, you're a makeup artist and there's a lot of value in your kit, things like that. If you're storing them in your house and there's significant value there, I would also say to look into getting a home-based business insurance that you add on to an existing policy, because you'll save some money there and you'll also get that coverage. I personally tend to be a little bit more risk averse, but do what makes sense for you in terms of insurance. You don't want to, over-insure yourself early on because every dollar counts, you have to pay for it. But the costs can vary based on what you need, and you can get coverage for pretty minimally, like $40 a month, even less than that, depending on your needs. So like I said, there's a lot of free resources out there. You can reach out and get quotes for free to see what makes sense for your business. But those are some of the basics that I would say out of the gates would be relevant.
Great. So what is workman's comp and how does it apply to freelance artists? What are some of the implications there when it comes to that?
So in a nutshell, workman's comp is basically if you get injured or get sick as a direct result of your job, it can cover things like medical costs, partial salary replacement, things like that. It's kind of like another type of insurance, if you will, but it's not classified in the same way. So to take a step back for a second, as a freelance artist, 99% of the time, you're going to be paid as an independent contractor, right? You're going to get a 1099 at the end of the year. You're not going to be an employee for a company considered, on their payroll, receiving the benefits of that company, right? So as an independent contractor, you're usually not eligible for workers' comp for the companies that are hiring you to do the bookings. So you want to make sure that you're covering yourself. And also, as you start working with more companies, they might require you to have workers' comp because it reduces kind of their liability in a sense, because I think there's less fear that, you're going to go after them because you have your own coverage. So, as you get further along in your career and you're starting to work, with more companies versus individuals, you might need to look into that because, like I said, they might require it in order for you to work for them. And you don't want to prevent yourself, from getting bookings because you don't have the coverage. And there are benefits to having it. Like I said, God forbid something happens, you have coverage for, medical expenses, possible salary, wage repayment, things like that. And I do also just want to flag with workers' comp that at the state level, there's some requirements there based on how you're set up as a business. And, whether you're an S Corp or different types of corporations, like California, for example, if you are the only employee of your company, you're then required to have it if you set yourself up as a company. So just make sure, as you're solidifying yourself, that you're checking the local laws to see how you need to be handling workers' comp and make sure you're compliant, because the last thing you want is to get slapped with a big fine when you could have just paid, like a small amount every month to cover yourself.
This is all really valuable information because we have to view ourselves as a business. So this is great. So just pivoting a little to talk about taxes, the grueling taxes. I've heard that it's best, I've heard that it's best for freelance artists to pay their taxes on a quarterly basis. How do you prepare your taxes on a quarterly basis, and why is this beneficial?
So I personally find two main benefits to paying quarterly. The first one is it kind of forces you to do it throughout the year, so you don't end up at the end of the year with this huge backlog and feeling overwhelmed and a ton of stuff to put together on a super, super short turnaround. And the second thing is you're not hit with a giant unexpected tax bill at the end of the year either, because you've been paying it quarterly. So it's a lot easier to manage your money, to get used to like, okay, what is actually mine versus what do I owe to the government and taxes and things like that. So those are the two things that I personally think are most valuable about it. There's a lot of helpful information actually on the IRS website that walks you through how to file quarterly, how to submit the payments, everything like that. I definitely think that you should put money aside. And if it were me, I would put money aside every time, because every time you're paid or on a monthly basis, because the worst thing is to like get to the end of the year and have a payment due and you don't have the money for it, right? So it's easier to just get used to that out of the gate as you're getting paid, to set things aside for your taxes. And when it comes to filing, like I said, there's a lot of guides on how to do it, but at the end of the day, what you're going to need to know is your net profit or loss as a business, right? So keeping track of the money coming in, what are you getting paid, and then all of the money that's going out, and the difference between the two is going to be what you make or, a loss, which hopefully we don't have, right? So whether it's job costs, you have to buy, you need to get a car service to get to a job, or if you're paying for insurance, like we just talked about, all of those things, make sure you're just keeping track of them, because when it comes to filing your taxes, the more organized you are, the easier it's going to be.
Great. So what does it mean to be incorporated versus unincorporated? And what would you recommend?
So the difference between the two is it's basically separating yourself from the business. So if you're incorporated, you as a business owner are separate from your business. Whereas if you're unincorporated, it's the same thing, right? You are your business. So you're personally then liable for, any debts that come up or anything that might happen. They can go after your personal assets. Whereas if you're incorporated, it's separate. The business is the business, and then you are you as an individual. So like I said earlier, I'm more of a risk averse person. So I would definitely say be incorporated, but there's costs that come with that. There's an application process. It's not something that like just happens like this. So you have to, think about where you are in your business and what that possible risk would be, and evaluate that for yourself before you, spend the money on it is what I would say. But I think eventually, like as your business is picking up, it's something you definitely want to look into and probably do at some point.
Great. So what do you have any tips for creatives who are in an agency? How should they go about sort of talking to their agents about money and managing their finances?
So, I mean, just since we were just talking about being incorporated, if you're with an agency and you become incorporated, don't delay in, making sure your manager knows, because you want to make sure all of your payments are going through to your new corporation and you don't have a mess to figure out with taxes. So, I think that goes into the larger picture of just being in good communication with, your manager and the agency all the time, because as long as you guys are on the same page, things will flow through the way that you need them to. I would also say that if you have expenses and receipts that are part of jobs, make sure that you're turning those in as soon as you can, because in order for an agency to bill on your behalf, most of the time, we have to have all that documentation. So the sooner you get that to the agency, the sooner the agency can get the invoice out to the client and start collecting that money to get you paid. And we all know at the end of the day, that's the most important part, is making sure you're getting paid. So stay organized, submit your receipts, and stay in, constant communication, be on the same page with your team.
So any hot tips in regards to just anything in finance? Finances could be pretty scary. So anything that you want to add here that could shed light to that scary world?
Yeah. I mean, don't let it scare you guys, lean into it so that you get comfortable and do it early, because as more stuff starts going on, the harder it will be to lean into it and start figuring it out, right? So there's a lot of tools out there. Don't get overwhelmed. A quick Google is always your best friend. But a couple of things that I would say to set you up for success and make it seem maybe a little bit less scary is you want to set up a separate bank account. This is your business, right? It'll make it much easier to track what's coming in and what's going out for when it comes time for taxes, or just to see how you're doing if it's all separate. So I would suggest setting up a separate bank account for your business. And then I would also suggest anytime you're going to do a booking, get it in writing what you're getting paid. And I know sometimes people are like nervous to do that because you don't want to make the relationship weird with your client, but it's your business, right? You have to treat it like your business. And as long as you massage that messaging the right way, you should be fine with it. So get things in writing, open up an account separate for your business. And then the last thing I would say, which I kind of already touched on, is just, be organized, keep everything that you need, keep your documentation. You don't have to be an expert in business, in money, but it is your business. So you want to make sure you're treating it like that. Take it seriously. The numbers are important. So treat it like that, and you'll figure it out. You got it. It's not as scary as you think once you dive in.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for shedding light on this hot topic. A lot of gems that could be pulled from this. Now we're going to pivot to portfolios, where I'll be interviewing Sonora.
Hey, buddy.
Hi, Sonora. So Sonora is an artist portfolio editor here at the Wall Group. An artist portfolio is integral to booking artist work and securing your clients. So she's going to walk us through some of the basics to know. Can you talk through some of the common categories / way to display your work on your portfolio?
Sure. So typically the major categories you would divide a portfolio into are editorial, advertising, red carpet, videos, and runway. But you can also have other categories for specialties like grooming or beauty-focused images. It's great to display everything on a dedicated portfolio website. I highly recommend you invest in a website like Squarespace. It's just easy to send out to clients and agents, and it just looks really professional. But if you don't have a website yet, PDFs are great too. You can make PDFs in Adobe Bridge, which is free, or you can make a slide deck in Google Slides, which is also free. I would recommend, if you have something really specific you're pitching for, using a PDF, maybe 10 to 20 images. That's really where a PDF is best used. But yeah, definitely having a portfolio website is just so nice to just be able to send off that link.
So what are some of the best practices when it comes to arranging your artist work?
Sure. So I think first I want to talk about cropping, like when to crop, when not to crop. So typically a good rule of thumb is if it's editorial or advertising, you want to not crop it as much as possible. I know that Instagram can kind of crop the top and bottom of an image, like a vertical image, and that's okay, but you want to keep it as close to the way the image was published as possible. On the other hand, red carpet images are totally fine to crop as long as you have the rights to publish that image in the first place. So that's a good thing to note. But yeah, the other thing that I want to talk about is just selecting images in general. First, you want to start with high-res images. To me, high-res is an image that is at least 800 pixels wide. So you want at least 800 pixels wide or larger. Smaller images can look kind of pixelated or fuzzy, and it just like doesn't look as professional. So start with high-res. And then you want to think about what's going to be at the top of your book. What are people going to see first? Or maybe what's the only thing people are going to see when they look? Maybe they don't have a lot of time to look at your portfolio and they just see the first several images. So I would put images that have recognizable talent from established publications and your most recent work towards the top, or your most important work towards the top. So it's just something to think about. I would also think about what images look good next to each other, what colors go together, just does it look beautiful? Does it look seamless? Kind of think about your aesthetic and your voice when you're putting an edit together. If you don't know where to start, I would you can look at the Wall Group website and look at some of our portfolios to get inspiration, or look at maybe your favorite brand's Instagram or a brand you want to work with and kind of see their edit and how they put images together. You can kind of mimic that and like get inspiration there too.
Awesome. So a job is complete. What are the best ways to reach out to either the producer or photographer to get the photos that the imagery of the work that was created?
So you definitely want to reach out, but I think just starting to develop those relationships with photographers and producers, so you get their email them after the job and request those images. They're taking time out of their day to send you those. You just want to make sure that you say thank you and you kind of get to know them a little bit, so they feel comfortable sending you those photos. In terms of red carpet images, going to Getty Images or Wire Images to buy the rights to those photos. If you can't buy the rights to the photos right away, I would save the images in your archive. You can't post them, but you can still save them and maybe buy them later, or at least have them to show off in your archive, but not showing them off on social media unless you buy them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sonora. And everyone, if you have any additional questions for finance and portfolios, and the additional topics that we'll be covering, make sure that you're asking on the Q&A box below. So now I'm going to pivot a little bit to social media. Social media and portfolios play hand in hand. With the rise of social media drastically shifting the way that we consume media and imagery, it's become an integral part of the fashion and beauty industry and has granted us direct access to artists' work. So I'm just going to talk through some of the best practices to keep in mind as a freelance artist on social media. The number one thing that you'll hear, and if you hear only one thing, consistency is key. Making sure that you're present and always posting. It's important to continue that conversation on social media and not just dip out after a week. So make sure that you're consistent within posting. The next thing is just be authentic. Your followers can tell when you're being genuine. They're more likely to engage with posts that feel personal rather than something that is overproduced or was not created by you. Followed by engaging. Instagram is all about building connections with your community. Acknowledging a comment may earn you a lifelong fan. So take a moment to respond, and engage with the community that you're building. The next thing is captions. Be conversational, be sincere. It doesn't have to be a whole life story, but make sure that the messaging that you're wanting to put across is clear in the caption section. Also, storytelling. Add context to your post so that your fans can know what you were doing in that moment, so that it puts you at the scene of that photo. Diversify your content, play with video, stills, long form, short form, and see what works best for you, as well as tag wisely. If there's talent in the photo, make sure you're tagging them and hashtagging their name on the comment section. So if people are searching for that talent, your image is part of the circulation. And also make sure that you're repurposing your content on different platforms when applicable. So a video that was shot on TikTok could very well be repurposed for Reels. Make sure that your content is stretched, make it work for you. And also utilize all the features that platform has to offer. So for example, Instagram, making sure you're using feed, stories, Reels, lives, the videos, to essentially making sure that they're all playing for you. And being an early adopter in new features. The early adopters are the ones who catch the worm, as they say. So make sure that you are utilizing all the new features that each platform has to offer. And a pro tip, follow creators on IG for updates on all new features. That account allows you to see how to utilize all the new features and maximize engagement. And we also have a YouTube channel, the Wall Group Agency. You can reference a video by Christy Dash, who was in conversation with Danielle Martin, an artist here, on pro tips on how to use IG features. So for more content on best practices to look out for, make sure that you check out that YouTube channel. So now I'm going to invite, we're going to pivot to artist and agent relationships, and I'm going to invite Jay to come on the screen. Hi, Jay.
Hi, guys.
Hi. So Jay started off as a model agent 20 years ago and transitioned to being a photo producer for many years, followed by becoming a creative talent agent 9 years ago. He's very well versed on all things management, so excited to chat with you. So we'll just dive right in. What does it look like when it comes to signing new talent? What do you look for?
You know, I think the industry has changed so much that it's kind of an overall package. You know, you want to look at an artist that can check many boxes, you know, the portfolio, the work, social media, press, you know, what things they do. I think additional to that, it's like being able to see where, as an agent, I fit in. Can I help this person grow and expand their career? I think personally, also one thing I look at is collaboration. So like if I'm looking at a makeup artist portfolio, I look at the hair, I look at the photography, I look at the wardrobe to see how they collaborate, how they work together in a team.
So what usually grabs your attention when it comes to just like that imagery?
You know, I think it's just a clear vision, a clear point of view, you know, something relatable. I think that's so important right now. I think that's what a lot of clients are looking for. Something that people can relate to or aspire to.
Mm-hmm. Do you recommend cold emails or DMs? What are the specific do's and don'ts when it comes to reaching out to an agency or an agent?
You know, Naima mentioned this on an earlier panel about reaching out to artists, and I think it's the same for agents and agencies. You know, it's different. Every agent and every agency does things a little bit different, but I think most agencies these days have a link or a way to contact them or submit your work on their website. So that I would always say that's your first step is go to the website, see if there's a way to submit your work. And if there is, you know, start there. If there's a specific agent or person that you feel inspired by, I think it's really important to be personalized. Personally, I don't check my DMs very often, but you know, there could be a person that does. I think cold emails or DMs could be fine, but I think it's just about, you know, as Naima said, being very professional about it, being clear and concise, you know, and make it personal. I've had people reach out and I'm BCC'd and it's a long email that I can tell was forwarded to multiple different agents. You know, that isn't going to inspire me to respond because that isn't directed to me. You know, so if there's a specific agent, make it personal as to why you're reaching out to that agent specifically and make it short and concise. You know, the world of an agent is very busy sometimes. So taking that into consideration, maybe Fashion Week isn't the best time to reach out. Also, maybe not the weekends. So I think best practices are, middle of the week, middle of the day, when things are, the agent is in the mix of their work and at their email. And additionally, just making sure it's clear and concise. I've gotten emails where somebody's asking for representation and it's like the link doesn't work or their website is down or their Instagram is private. And, it's like I have to go and do the work to try to find out who this artist is. And that's just not, what we're looking for. So I think just making sure you're clear, concise, and cross every T and dot every I.
So for that freelancer who has presented a clear email, now you're having the conversation and you're ready for representation. Describe the relationship between an agent and the creative that you represent.
It's kind of hard because I think every relationship is different. I think if I can describe it in one word, it's partnership. There's this myth, I would say, in the industry that, you get an agent and, everything changes and you just kind of show up and do your crap. That's not how it works. It's a partnership. I have a different relationship with each of my artists, but with each one, it's a partnership and we plan and strategize together. We'll sit and talk about a specific goal and it's like, okay, I'm going to approach it from this angle, you approach it from that, and we work together to achieve those goals. I think it's also really important to be on the same page with your agent. There's a professional chemistry that there has to be between the agent and the artist. You can have an amazing artist and you can have a great agent, but if they don't mesh or they don't see eye to eye, it's not going to work, like any relationship in life. So I think that's really important to be able to meet with, the agent and make sure that you guys are on the same page. You guys understand each other and understand how to communicate with one another.
To get granular, like what does that process look like in terms of developing an artist?
I have worked with artists of, 20, 30 years experience, a few years experience, and even some that had just started their career. At all aspects, you're continuing to develop. You're continuing to grow. The industry changes so much. So development it's looking at where the artist is and seeing how we can continue to grow that, how we can attract new clients, how we can change the career and expand their business in many different ways. But I think it's coaching, it's advising, it's communication. Sometimes it's also just having conversations and really thinking about strategizing, what the career looks like in that roadmap. I always, when I meet new artists, I always say, where are you now? I like to find out who their clients are, what they're doing, what they're into now, and what their goals are. So you can kind of strategize a roadmap from where you are now to where you're going to be in 6 months, a year, 5 years, and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm. Obviously being at an agency can open a lot of doors for an artist, but as you mentioned, it's a mutual drive between the artist and the agents to really move things forward. What are the key traits that you've seen in your years of being a manager that really make that successful artist in the industry?
I think there's a lot of, again, it goes back to being an overall total package, but I think the three biggest traits that I think an artist needs to be successful is being nimble, being resourceful, and being collaborative. Being nimble, the industry shifts so much. As you mentioned, I've been a creative agent for 9 years, and what I did back then and what I do now is completely different. Realistically, what I did a year ago is different than what I've been doing now. So things are always changing and evolving. So I think it's being able to roll with those changes, to being nimble, to being able to say, you know what, we're going to try this because it can potentially further my career is really important. Resourceful is another thing. I think especially when it comes to stylists, I think the stylists that are the most successful are the ones that find ways and find solutions to make things work. And it's the same for hair and makeup. I think things are a bit chaotic still with the world after the pandemic. So I think people that are resourceful and that know how to make things work is really important. And again, as I mentioned earlier, collaborative is so important. Brands and clients want somebody that they can work together with, as an agent, I want to be able to collaborate and partner with my artist. So having that personality and that ability to collaborate and to work together is really important as well.
Oh, thank you so much for all of these tips. Now we're going to bring back everyone to just go through some of the questions that you may have. Make sure that you're asking questions on the chat. Great. All right, so I'm going to run through some questions here. Jay, we have a question for you already. So for somebody who's looking to join an agency as a creative talent, hair, makeup, etc., what's the best way to cultivate a positive relationship with an agency?
I think I'd say for my roster, about 80% of the talent that I represent has come from recommendations, whether it's another artist I represent, a client, a producer, somebody I work. So I think really diving into the industry and networking, going to different networking events, when you do work, networking with the crew, because you never know who works with who. But I think also it's just about, really doing your research. What kind of artists do the agency represent? If you're still assisting, is there somebody on that roster whose career I emulate that I can potentially represent? I can potentially assist, so I can build that relationship with the agent. I've signed people who I worked with 9 years ago as assistants are now on my roster as well. So I think it's just starting to build that relationship in any way you can is important.
Great. I have a question for Sonora, and also Jay, you're free to jump in on this as well. If you're doing some consumer work, whether it's family, weddings, etc., and commercial and editorial work, is it good to have both portfolios on your website, or should you separate the two?
I think on Squarespace, you can have separate links. I think it's great to have both those links, have that in your back pocket if you need it. Definitely save those images for your archive. You never know when you're going to need it. I would just see what the job is and send a link that's appropriate so they don't have to wade through work that they don't want to see. I don't know, Jay, maybe you can add to that too, but I think having them, but maybe having them separate.
I kind of agree. Personally, I think the portfolio should be an overview, but it's also good to have sub portfolios or other links, or as you mentioned earlier, PDFs. For many of my artists, because they're so multifaceted, I have a hairstylist who does a ton of color or does a ton of men as well as women. I will have her portfolio that has a little bit of all of it, but then I will have a specific men's only link or a color only link or PDF. So we can do those things. So, if you're doing weddings and it's something that, you're working on a wedding, you plan to work in weddings, having a portfolio or a separate link that's specific to weddings could be a thing as well.
Jay, back to you. When is the best time to try and get into an agency? Do you have to have celebrity clients for an agency to take you or look at your work?
I think that's also a myth. There is a lot of very seasoned and successful artists that don't work with celebrity. I think celebrity tends to get more press, so people tend to see that more. But it's not necessarily a need unless that's where you're planning to go. I think it's important to start developing the relationship as early as you can, whether that's assisting, whether that's just having a conversation, and just learning how to develop it. It's hard to say because it's different for every artist. There's artists that I know worked for 10, 15 years before they were represented. There's artists I know that were represented within a year of starting their career. So there's never really a perfect time. It's just about establishing a relationship and just being open to the feedback and the advice that's given to you to get you to where you want to be in your goals.
Mm-hmm. To that point, a lot of up and coming artists do a lot of assisting work. So what is the best time, or sort of what does that transition period look like, transitioning from an artist assisting to an artist? And what are some of the best practices or tips that you can provide?
I think any type of transition in life, there's always transition is never easy. There's always growing pains in transition. So I think you have to follow your gut. I think there's a time, and if you really step back and analyze, you kind of start knowing, and it's a gradual period. I've had artists on my roster that are working with huge clients and also still assisting. It is going to be a time where there's overlap in any way in the industry. There's also artists that I've had that have transitioned from more commercial jobs to working with celebrity or working in different aspects of the industry. And there is a transition period where you're kind of overlapping both. I think it's when you're ready, when I feel like you're not learning as much anymore. And sometimes that's also not necessarily that you need to stop assisting. Maybe it's time to assist other people. You're always learning, but I think there comes a point where what you're doing at work is just so turnkey and it's almost second nature that you're ready for a change and you're ready to transition to your next step, which could be maybe assisting less, maybe being more particular about who you're assisting, maybe building your book. But I think that's the hardest part, is being able to assist and also build your own book at the same time.
Mm-hmm. So when you have work with a brand and you don't have the tools to necessarily like make that video, should they provide those tools or should you go out and buy them? How do you sort of like balance the financial aspects of that when it comes to like working with a brand?
I mean, I think, especially as artists, and this is a conversation I have with most of my roster, artists are perfectionists. They want to have this huge production and they want to make it so perfect. Some of the best videos have been captured on iPhones. Daylight, sunlight is some of the best lighting. You really don't need to have the tools to create great content. I always joke, for makeup artists, I get a ton of interview requests. If I had $1 for every time I was asked about a red lip for one of my makeup artists, I'd be making a lot more money. The basics, go back to the basics, and keep it simple. If you don't have the equipment, find ways, again, going back to being resourceful, to make the video and make great content without having to have a huge production. It could be natural light. It can be an iPhone. It can be a friend that lets you borrow something. You can use your friend as a model. And sometimes there doesn't even need to be a person in the film to capture products or for a brand.
I just want to add something quickly to that I've, seen people do before that could be helpful for this. There are a lot of other creatives out there also trying to build their books and their portfolio. And you can find other people in a similar situation as you to partner with. Maybe there's a photographer that's trying to build their brand and they want to come help you shoot and they have the equipment. So putting feelers out for things like that can help you too.
I mean, yeah, this was something that was talked about in our early session about creative community and making sure that you're growing together and finding like-minded individuals who can help each other to sort of get to that next level. Speaking of which, Danielle, when it comes to somebody who's just sort of getting started, and earlier you talked about organization and receipts and making sure that your business is buttoned down, but are there any additional finance and money management tools that you would recommend a freelance artist to know?
Yeah. So I think, again, I just want to stress, like, setting up a separate account for your business will help you stay organized, even if you're not an organized person, because you don't have the commingling of all of, your personal things with your business. So that's definitely something I would say to do, especially if you tend to be on the less organized side. And I would say, just set up something simple in like a Google sheet, an Excel tracker, where you're saying like, okay, this is the money I'm being paid, and this is what's going out, and this is what it's for. And just keep that going real time. So you're not playing, catch up, how you're doing. You can make sure you're staying, within where you want to be in terms of spending, if you have a budget for a job, making sure you're not going over it because you're tracking that stuff real time. So to summarize that, I would say the bank account and set up just a simple Google sheet. It's easier than you think if you just like stay on it.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Does anyone have any parting words, additional advice that you'd like to share to the viewers who are watching? nobody has anything, I will just emphasize looking at your portfolio, but also your social media presence is really key. Everybody's watching all different facets of your work on the digital space. So making sure that it's reflective of who you are as an artist with a clear perspective, making sure that all of your imagery is in the right space, and your social reflect that. So we want to thank everyone for watching and tuning into our first ever WALLxCHANGE Summit. In case you missed any of today's sessions, they will be available for rewatch. For any further questions, please feel free to email inclusion@thewallgroup.com. Thanks, everyone.